Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
Action. And we're back with another episode of our Barber's Brief. If you're a new listener, we use this forum to discuss what's caught our eye in the last couple weeks. We highlight our marketing moment, but more importantly, we get into out of the week, which is one of our favorite segments.
Isn't it?
Really is. It really is.
I just mostly love saying that. I don't know why we whisper it either. It's funny.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. But Mark, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good morning to you, V. I'm good.
Are you fired up? You've got to be. I'm fired up.
I'm fired up. Yeah. Especially because this is the second time we've tried this today. This is very exciting. I feel more prepared even than I was before this morning.
That's right. That's right. Me too. I'm right there with you. Yeah. So let's get right into it. I think you've got the first one. What caught your eye?
Cool article from Professor Koen Pauwels talking about, did Nike lose its cool or its place? And so we talked about Nike a couple of weeks ago.
We did.
Yeah, and there was a really great article, I guess, a thought leadership piece on them. So this kind of builds off of that. Professor, I always have an alliteration problem. Professor Pauwels talked about how looked at the 4 Ps and kind of zeroed in on the product and the place. So I thought it was just super useful because 4 Ps is very relevant and a way to evaluate and look at different companies. So from a product perspective, Professor Powell's take on this was that a lot of the former CEO had flooded the market with a lot of lifestyle brands. So products that had been around for 40 years, which is crazy to me that these products have been around for that long. Yeah. Things like the Dunks, Air Force Ones, and Jordan Ones. Yeah. And so rather than like focusing on innovation, they just kind of flooded the market with a lot of that kind of product, which is cool because the consumers were snapping up, but then retailers are like, how about something new? And so, it wasn't just a new color sway.
Right.
It should be more than a new color sway is what their take on that was. But the big one is his focus on place. And here he specified a couple of things that I thought was really interesting. So we talked previously about how Nike made this strategic plan to shift away from retailers and then to their own experience. So direct-to-consumer experience, whether it's through e-com or direct-to-consumer stores.
Sure.
Like the Nike branded shops.
Yep.
And in so doing, they reduced their physical availability. So an Ehrenberg Bass paradigm, but they've legitimately reduced their footprint. For example, Nike had a long-standing partnership with Foot Locker. I believe this is in 2020. So Nike products accounted for 75% of the sales at Foot Locker, which dropped in 2021 to 70%, and then dropped to 60% in 2022.
Crazy.
Right. And so the thing about that was like, okay, so that's Nike retracting, but then them retracting creates opportunities for new brands to come in. Foot Locker being what it is, they're like, well, we have numbers to hit too, so they bring in more products.
Totally.
Which just opens this window for competition. So it's an interesting like conundrum. Like, yeah, I get the idea about direct-to-consumer, but there's a caveat there where you're creating new space for competitors to take over market share.
Yeah, for me, the other side of this is looking at if you're going to go direct to consumer. I'm not against Nike stores and things to that effect. You either have to be offering something truly unique or a complete shopping experience that a lot of these other retailers do already. So you're not just going after it from a footwear perspective. Let's think about our shared time at Sport Check. Like people would come in not only for shoes, they needed outerwear, hard goods, soft goods. Like it was a complete experience where Nike doesn't play in a lot of those spaces. Or if you look at other storefronts, they don't have that. So again, if a consumer had to decide, well, if I can buy all in one place, I'm going to go there. Unless you're offering something genuinely unique. But I don't know, every time I've walked through a Nike store in the mall, it's not really jumping with people.
Well, and I think that's where the unique part, like the product innovation has to play a role. Like if you're going to retract on the place, then you have to up weight on the innovation side of things. And it sounds like they weren't doing that. Anyway, super interesting story. It's evolving. And their shares just spiked because they brought a new CEO.
I know. I should have jumped on that stock like I recommended.
Yeah.
Please don't come to us for stock advice.
Not at all.
Please.
Not at all. Let me tell you about how much money I've lost on things like... Anyway. Next one, B. That's for another time.
All right. So Amazon says no to remote work, mandates 5-day return to office. Dun, 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 dun. So Amazon veteran Jassy, who took to the helm after Jeff Bezos stepped down back in 2021, issued a memo to all staffers that they need to be required to work in office in 2025, and in quotes, the way we were before the onset of COVID. So essentially ushering in a new era for Amazoners. I don't know if that's what they call themselves, where they need to be full-time in office moving forward. Now, the reason this, for me, kind of struck a chord a little bit is I feel like we opened up Pandora's box a little bit with this new way of working and after COVID. And I think a lot of these organizations saw record profits. They were able to do really well in these environments. And now seeing a reversal where you were able to introduce more flexibility. You had people move to the suburbs, probably finding better balance between, their home and, their lives in general.
Yeah.
Now you're forcing and mandating this, back to work 5 days a week in the office. It's almost like if we talked about at that time about employees, it was like an employee market. Yeah. It's like completely shifted. Like Cisco just let go 5,600 people. Yeah. Which was, I think, I have a percentage here, 7%. They had to reduce their headcount by 7%. So obviously Amazon employees are up in arms around this, the reduced flexibility, etc. But I really wanted to get your take on this, Mark, because I think it's an interesting thing, and we'll likely see more companies maybe follow suit, especially if they have a lot of real estate that they need to make sure that they're still using some capacity.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I think it was, what's the guy from, not Matt Damon, not Matt Damon, but Jim Damon, something like that from, there's one of the big banks in the US. Anyway, he's the CEO there. Or in the investment firms, but he was talking about how it hurts his heart or something to that effect to see all these empty office buildings downtown, wherever he is. Anyway, but from an owner perspective, if you have invested, or a CEO perspective, if you've invested in physical space, it's sad to walk through the empty halls day after day, and then seeing people that are in the office that are on Zoom calls all day is also kind of sad. And I have some friends that run their own companies, and I know they've got a really strong take on how important it is to be together, especially for new people that don't know how things are done and are really junior in their career who don't know how work works. So there's that. I fully appreciate that. On the flip side, as a employee looking at the landscape going, me as an individual who runs my own personal P&L, going back to the office is a really bad move. I have more expenses. My costs go up. I'm not making more profit. In fact, sometimes they may be squeezing me on the profit side, squeezing the margins. And so there's this impasse. It's tricky. I think ultimately everyone's just going to keep Amazon's going to do what they're going to do. We're going to force people back. It's going to force people to move into a fight or flight situation where they're either going to stay and live with it, or just go and find somewhere else. I don't know. It's not an easy answer, but it's an interesting one for sure. From a employer brand perspective, I think there are some people that prefer to work in-house, and there are people that prefer to work at home. I agree. I think there will be different kinds of businesses that emerge from this and cultures that emerge from this.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting nonetheless.
Yeah.
What else did you have?
Well, I got to learn how to say this. Sveriges, Annonsorer. Let's go with the Swedish Advertising Federation.
I'm not Swedish. So I don't
Association know why you're looking of Swedish Advertisers. Let's go with that one. They produced a new report this year. We featured them last year with the Future Marketing Department report, which was awesome. This one with NOA Consulting, and looking at their effectiveness database which is similar to the IPA database. So people submit for awards through this association. Over the last 4 years, they've accumulated 415 entries from 243 brands. And then they now analyze that, because everyone submits all this back data on like what happened with the campaign, what was the campaign about, and how, all that kind of stuff. And so they looked at the creative approaches and the campaign effects. And so things not surprising when they looked at brand campaigns versus activation campaigns. The creative tools that they used are probably things you'd expect. So in an activation campaign, way more likely to see a use of a call to action and things like tangible benefits. Whereas in the brand building campaigns, way more likely to see things like entertainment and humor.
Yep.
When they compared B2B and B2C campaigns, B2B campaigns typically followed more of a traditional playbook of activation kind of campaigns.
Okay.
So they weren't entertaining. I'm being extreme to say this.
More
this
direct.
Way, more direct, more realistic, realism kind of perspective, way more call to action, way more tangible benefits, which are all those things that we've talked about with other people about the cost of dull and how B2B ads are falling behind. Like, so I think there's some interesting like supporting evidence for some of those findings in the other studies. And then when they looked at the top 10 approaches that generated business effects, so the creative approaches that generated business effects, top 3 were recurring brand elements, humor, and then a premium look and feel. Really close fourth was entertainment. At the bottom,
like the entertainment factor, is that
was it entertaining? Did, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Partially, does it capture I'm sure that leads into capturing my attention.
Yeah.
At the bottom of that top 10 list were things like cleverness, tangible benefits, and realism. So all those things that are heavy in the activation ads and heavy in the B2B ads are the things that are least likely to have an impact on business outcomes.
I wonder if it's also like B2B going through like their marketing kind of like life cycle, where you're kind of like you start off with just kind of focusing on what which is going to be very product oriented, the reasons to buy, why we're superior over our competition. Yeah. Where it's now, I think like a lot of literature is pushing even like B2B even more in this space. Like, no, you like have fun, be humorous, have a premium look and feel if that's your brand. Like again, it's not going to be for everybody, but be entertaining. And we are seeing some of those brands do that, but not everyone yet. And I think everyone has a license to play in this, and you got to be bold and go for it. I think. I don't know.
Well, when we're talking to Adam, the risk of not being bold and not being dull.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Of being dull is actually probably bigger than the risk of not being dull.
Yeah, that's a great point.
What else you got?
Okay, this was just a little editorial piece by Johnny Corbet in Marketing Week that caught my eye, just because we're going into Q4 and obviously KPIs and performance is becoming a big topic everywhere. Yeah. And the title kind of, I'm not going to call it clickbaity because I thought it was really clever, but is the KPI still a good indicator of performance? So I'm like, it's almost like a juxtaposition there a little bit, but because it seems to be like KPI is synonymous with performance. But anyways,
or KP lies.
Or KP lies. I like that actually. Well done, well played. So the whole notion of this article was really around, when we translate key performance indicator to mean metric, we actually miss a large opportunity to ask bigger questions to leadership, to our teams, etc. Naturally, the term KPI has likely been more or less oversimplified, and that's where again it means that it's become more metric based. So when you think about like in digital marketing, your KPIs are like your cost per site visits, your return on ad spend, etc. Like it's become very narrow. And Johnny's whole perspective is, why do we just focus on those instead of looking at, deeper performing metrics outside of just the short termism like some of these metrics apply. So focusing on understanding performance holistically is something that he suggests. Moving away from isolated metrics to those larger metrics to kind of essentially move the needle. So if you're thinking of like business context, it could be like your penetration metrics, it could be your market share, it could be all these other things. Because on the one hand, you can have marketers tell you, but look at all this efficiency we're able to drive. Yeah. Cool. But our market share is still the same. Yeah. We didn't move the needle there. So it's too not polarizing. They're two opposite things, right? So how do we make sure we are leaning into some of those bigger KPIs again, and not just KPIs to mean the narrow view, short-term view metrics, the bigger picture, to help essentially become better at what we do.
Super interesting. I can't remember who said this. There's somebody famous, I'm sure, that said this, but show me the metric or the incentive and I'll tell you the behavior. Yeah. There's a lot of that happens. There is. And he even touched on like dashboards, like the danger of dashboards. Because if you think about dashboards naturally, what are they? They bring these metrics front and center. It could be a serif search. It could be whatever. For every business, it's going to be different. But that, if you're looking at it in the moment, week in, week out, day in, day out, that leads to short-termism. And you're not really looking at the bigger picture. And I think, again, that's where we have to be a little bit, you have to marry both sides. And I think it was James that said it best, when it comes to like thinking about marketing spend, it's like, how much am I putting in brand versus performance? It's like, well, you need to split it. It doesn't matter if it's 50-50. It doesn't matter if it's 64, like whatever works for you. I feel like it's the same thing with metrics. Like you need to have a balance of the bigger metrics, the business metrics themselves, then also complement that with anything that you can maybe, help inform strategic direction. Yeah, at the very least, you should have an effectiveness metric paired with an efficiency metric. Yeah. Right? Like, how much new revenue do I get? Yeah. And then what's the cost to acquire that new revenue? Yep. Like, that could be a thing. Yep. It's a good point. Easier said than done, but yeah.
Yeah, totally.
See, we just solved half of the world's problems.
You're welcome, world.
You also have a marketing moment, a case study.
We need to come up with a jingle for that. The marketing moment. It's the marketing moment. No.
It's like, yeah, I like it.
Okay. I'll just run with it.
We got a recording of it. We should just insert the jingle here.
Insert jingle here. I love it.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to sponsor the jingle, that'd be great too.
Exactly.
Little plug. Anyways. Okay. So how KFC integrated creative quality into their marketing effectiveness assessments.
Ooh.
I stumbled on this literally this morning, and I was going to do another one on Andrew Tyndall's write-up on Tupperware, which I think we should still do anyways. But I came across this one from Kantar, actually. And I thought it was really interesting case study. So quickly, just some background. In 2023, KFC was facing really, really stiff competition, especially from Burger King. And the reality is Burger King had a larger product range or more broader product range. KFC had fewer menu items and key price categories, which essentially was limiting their ability to compete effectively on both, say, the affordable and premium segments. Okay. So instead of looking to expand their menu, KFC partnered with Kantar to optimize their creative and media strategies to make the most of their existing product lineup. So it's not, I guess for me, it's like finding more efficiency or more opportunity within current structures versus then just trying to chart the playbook and kind of go in different directions.
Gotcha.
So the main challenge for KFC was to solve was how do they maximize their actual product offering? So by thinking about things like increasing their brand visibility and increasing their sales without immediately overhauling, their product range. Now, this was a compounding issue though for them. So like traditionally approaches for my campaign effectiveness actually neglected the contribution of creative quality. So that was never something that they were looking at as like a problem area or an area that they need to be doing differently.
Gotcha.
Cool. Let me catch up here quickly. So what KFC really needed, though, is to kind of find more of a data-driven way to assess and improve the effectiveness of their ads, ensuring that their messaging ties back to the consumers as well. So insert solution here. So I know you and I are quite familiar with Kantar. We've obviously had them on the podcast a few times, but they also have what they call a Kantar Lift ROI model. I don't know if you spent much time with that, but essentially so it integrates essentially your creative testing and media performance assessments. So it kind of like brings two worlds together, which are often really kind of separated. I know sometimes we like to throw around, not the what came first, but does media inform creative strategy or does creative inform media strategy? Well, imagine this new world where it's like, actually, we can assess both. And this is what it did. So they leveraging the AI tool. So like they have Link AI. KFC actually pre-tested their ads quickly and efficiently, which usually, it takes a longer time to do some of these testings, like usually it's about a couple of weeks that you want. This was a lot quicker turnaround to understand, first of all, the creative quality and then how their ads would perform, because essentially they would retrofit them in these surveys in more of an ad format to see how the audience would resonate. So they got both creative and media almost at the same time. Right. So they eventually, coming out of that report, then they really focused heavily on social platforms. So they went to TikTok, Snapchat, using those different ad formats to prioritize things like reach, something that we often talk about here on the podcast. And then obviously looking to what's the hook to convert that target audience. So by increasing their visibility to longer formats across those channels and employing short form content as reminders, KFC actually developed a cross-channel strategy that strengthened both the KPIs like visibility, consideration, and traffic all at once. So what was the outcome? Well, they were able to increase their sales by 1.5 times. They were able to increase their ROI by 1.4x. So off the heels of this, I think for me, the key takeaways is like your creative quality is essential. And again, even thinking about like what we highlighted like in the news today, you have to make sure that you are doing some of these pre-testing, making sure you are getting that pulse from the environment as much as possible. It's not a predictor of success, but at least it gives you a data point that you can leverage. AI tools, so like Link AI that Kantar has, and there's a lot of companies have different AI tools, can actually help accelerate some of the learnings and some of the adaptability that you need in the market. So I think looking into those as opportunities, I think is a no-brainer. Creative testing isn't too squishy to measure KFC campaigns, which proves that data-driven creative is something that we should be looking at as well. And then finally, cross-channel consistency. This is not new. Finding consistency across your channels, making sure that you're speaking to the consumer. I think the one thing I really liked is how they married the long form, the short form. The short form used more as a reminders, long forms like the storytelling. So I think just being very purposeful in that space probably led to a lot of the success that they saw. So hats off to KFC and Kantar for that case study.
It's a cool one. Yeah, the long form one is interesting because remember like back when you and I first met and started working together, it was almost like the opposite, where they're like, we have these 30-second or 60-second ads. Let's just put them on social. Or
just go. Yeah. And
then over the last, 15 years or so, everyone's kind of migrated towards like snackable, bite-sized content.
Yeah.
And somehow, the idea of like people have the attention span of a goldfish took over. Yeah. And everybody then moved to, we have to have like really short form assets that are just glanceable.
Yeah, 3 seconds.
When in reality is like, there's also 3.5 hour movies that people watch.
That still watch, yeah.
So there is somewhere in between if it doesn't have to be 3 seconds. It doesn't have to be 3.5 hours, but it's interesting thinking about that optimizing the media mix across channels. Which then you start thinking about like the importance of distinctive brand elements having a flexible palette. Like, you've got audio, you've got jingles, you've got, characters that can do a lot of that work that provides that consistency across channels. Super interesting.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And you highlighted earlier today, just in, from the news, like humor, premium look and feel, entertainment, like being clever. Entertainment, like those little things it's so paramount in your ability to drive, that distinctiveness, if you will. So again, really interesting little things that you can do to actually make a larger impact without, again, going in and blowing it all up. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I liked most about this. It's like, they didn't change the menu. They didn't change their logo. They didn't, it's like, no, like there's better ways to do this. Let's just be a little bit more effective in both our ad placements and our creative.
Totally.
Simple.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right. You were tasked with ad of the week, my friend. What did you find?
So this is not a new one, but I thought that's interesting. And by the way, it's a 60-second spot on YouTube that I found. But Miro is a B2B product. Yeah. So kind of going back to what we were talking about before, it's a cool product. So Paul Darcy is the CMO over there, and then there's a guy named Paul Dervin that also works over there as well. And past podcast, but I interviewed Paul Dervin. He used to work at the Irish Lottery, which has done some incredible things with brand assets and that kind of stuff. But coming back to that B2B report that we were just talking about, how B2B typically is very factual, realistic, focuses on call to action, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Miro's campaign from 2022 was addressed at like a fun, entertaining, all those other things that were effective. Ad, and so they feature this giant monster kind of careening through a city and like spraying monster guts all over the place. And so there's this group of people that are trying to figure out how to solve this monster problem that they have, and they use Miro to do it, which is kind of cool. It's like the way they did it is really, it is very entertaining. It's very interesting, and but it's definitely for B2B. Like, I don't know many people that just for fun manage their household chores with Miro.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
I suppose you could,
I guess.
But it's a definite B2B play, and I just thought it was a really fun way. Like, you might, like, I was just imagining how you have an approval process that somebody, and maybe it was like Paul, and we should ask them, Paul and Paul.
Love it.
To talk about this, because it's a fascinating approach to driving creative. And then there's a behind the scenes how they made it, which is also really interesting. So I don't know. There's just a really cool approach to that makes it really interesting, entertaining, engaging in a way, and still get the message out without it being, overtly about, here's a person at a desk using Miro.
Yeah. I watched it and I'm like, okay, this is really clever. Like it's really well done. So again, not something that you would expect, and kind of showing just the product itself. It's really entertaining. So totally. I'll encourage everybody. Well, we'll obviously add the links like we do every time and have everyone have a look at it. So great find, man. Great find.
And up next for next week,
Adam Morgan.
Yeah.
And the cost of doll. We're really excited about this one. We are able to get Adam in, and we talked about, well, not only did we talk about the study itself, but then we got into, B2B, if I remember correctly, and, kind of the advertising and dullness that exists in that space. Created some solutions that you could be looking for as well.
The four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great episode, and I think everyone will enjoy. And Adams was just such a great guest as well. So
yeah. And with that, V,
dude,
you know what? It's almost lunchtime, and so I asked my wife to put some profitability on the pot upstairs.
Oh, nice.
So I think that's almost ready for me.
That's almost ready. That's good.
So I'm going to go get some of that.
For me, naturally, profitability during lunch goes out the window. So I'm going to have to try to chase it in the afternoon. But yeah, that's kind of like on my schedule.
Well, it's a nice day outside to do that. So what a perfect day to go chase some profitability.
We'll take it. It is beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
And with that,
another great episode, my friend.
Another great episode.
This is awesome.
Yeah. By the way, we're getting close to 100.
Dude, it's going to happen soon.
Yeah. This is pretty good. We'll have to have a celebration. If anybody
need a celebration, we need an air horn.
No. We don't need an air horn. We got you.
We got me. That's fair.
This is amazing.
Yeah, we're almost there. All right, man. Have yourself a great day.
You too.
All right, ciao.
Ciao.